whose significant contributions to literature, education, and community life we remember in the Ethel Fortner-Ragan Community Award. Born in 1907, a coal miner's daughter, Ethel was nurtured by a loving and literate grandmother whose green thumb and the light in the Colorado high country shaped Ethel's early childhood. Her sense of the magic and power of language developed at her grandmother's knee. As she writes in a poem named Letter to a Young Author, "Dear friend, you need to desert your mountain, trust yourself to mingle with people. In daily encounter, catch the excitement, experience the whole human relation. No one can see people whole, but you glimpse a nose, a shoulder turning away. Enter the fragments, and through them, reach into people, set them in motion. What happens to you happens to me. Impulse to tell stories lives in us all. We're caught in endless wonder of words, color of laughter, texture of pain." By age 19, Ethel was sharing her love of learning and literature as a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse high in the Rocky Mountains. From there, her vocation as an educator took her to a school in a coal mining camp and eventually to a distinguished career with the Oregon School for the Blind. She served as a teacher, administrator, and passionate advocate for access to education for the visually impaired. A true visionary in the 1930s, Ethel believed that all children should have an academic environment supportive of their potential. As a result, she was instrumental in training Oregon teachers to adapt classroom strategies to reach children with various learning challenges. As a second career, Ethel and her husband Larry took up farming in Oregon. While relishing a connection to the land, the livestock, and their neighbors, Ethel and Larry continued to teach in the local schools and to cultivate programs in the arts along with her with cattle and hay. A stanza from her poem, Counting the Herd, provides a glimpse of their farm in spring. Out counting the cows in spring sun, mothers munching the hay that scatters the field, calves nestling and bunching, 9 here, 5 there. In the south pasture, a mother licking a new face, wet, shining white. One more than if counting had taken place yesterday. I did not know Ethel Fortner personally, but Dr. Edna Ann Loftus has told me of a delightful conversation with Ethel Fortner on one of her visits to the St. Andrew campus. Ethel said she came late to writing poetry after trying both music and painting in her active retirement from teaching. She drew inspiration from the Western mountains and the emotions of a life lived fully. Ethel's poetry reflects her connection with the rhythm of nature, the celebration of moments in time. Listen to Bread and Hyacinths, her poem. Dawn pours over hills to touch the day with color. My men calendar their day over coffee, bacon, scrambled eggs, discussion of hydraulics, the fuel. 2 people hear or see in some way. I have to put the sticky pages together. Since I wrote that poem, I'm going to begin again. So she's talking about the men who work on her farm. Dawn pours over hills to touch the day with color. My men calendar their day over coffee, bacon, scrambled eggs. Discussion of hydraulics diffuses around me. Kitchen hours balance against the May morning. I have learned to live within Sun rays reach through curtains, make an appointment with my mind. I'll mix the dough, put the half loaves in place, and leave them to rise. Beyond bread for the living, the day-warm world is waiting. I go to gather white hyacinths. As you can imagine, she was encouraged in her writing by editors at a number of literary magazines. She soon became a regular contributor to and poetry editor for Human Voice Quarterly. Her vocation as a poet had begun. Never content as a solitary artist, Ethel was soon teaching again, sharing her talents with other writers in community workshops and on college campuses throughout the country. Ethel cherished our own Ron Mays as a mentor and friend. She was a frequent and beloved visitor to our campus. Her work was published regularly in the St. Andrews Review, and the St. Andrews Press published her third book of poetry, Nervous on the Curves. Ethel was enthusiastic about Ron's vision to the St. Andrews Press and the creative writing program. She was provided financial support for Ron's efforts and helped create the press office we enjoy today. Ethel Fortner believed in the power of language to express authentic emotion, to capture the depth of the human spirit, and to bring people together. Her poem, A Sudden Clarity, expresses this connection well. Words, light and small, wait humbly. Two people, hear or see, in some way alike. Words ring out with, for both, a sudden clarity. Two people, again, feel quite separate. Words, how is it they can lock two people? The creation of multiple and deeply beloved communities was a hallmark of Ethel Fortner's life, as she affirmed in the final line of her poem, Easter Eggs Upon a Time. The line, much greater is allowed in a stretched out circle of love. Tonight we remember Ethel's gracious gift to education and to writing as we expand that circle of love to celebrate the achievements of those who have followed in Ethel Fortner's footsteps.
I'm so pleased and humbled and honored to have been asked to introduce the 2016 recipients of this award, Jan Schmidt and Brenda Gilbert. Above everything, Jan Schmidt values her family. She is a wife of 51 years to John, as well as a mother and grandmother. Originally from New York, she has lived the life of a traveler, moving around the country and all over the world, teaching and working to actively support her chosen communities. She settled down in Laurinburg to spend more time with her grandchildren, splitting time between those living here in North Carolina and Florida. As her heart dictates, she continues to also volunteer and experiment in the arts. Besides sharing her talents with the community as a storyteller, Brenda Gilbert is a wife to Gray, a mother of 4, and a grandmother to 9. She has lived in Laurinburg for most of her adult life. She has served on countless boards in the community, including the Chamber of Commerce, Red Cross, United Way, and Habitat for Humanity. Currently, she serves on the Scotia Village Board of Trustees and is the Secretary for the Arts Council of Scotland County. She also serves as a choir director and lecturer at St. Mary's Catholic Church. As impressive as their separate biographies and histories are, the true magic for this community began when they put their talents together. And this award is given in recognition of their enduring vision, creativity, and enormous contributions to Laurinburg and Scotland County. These two ladies work diligently to write grants and get funds to bring the Storytelling and Art Center to fruition after they first brought a successful storytelling festival in 2007. The vision for the center included economic growth, downtown revitalization, community cohesion, and quality art and educational programming and opportunities for the people in this community. Together they brought world-famous storytellers along with renowned musicians, including the Preservation Hall Jazz Band. In more recent times, they started Dancing with the Stars, the Storytelling Guild, Ladies' Teas, Bluegrass on Sundays, and in late 2014, they reached their goal of turning the Storytelling and Arts Center of the Southeast into the Arts Council of Scotland County. Cities across the country, both large and small, realize what a vibrant art scene can do to attract people downtown and spur the opening and expansion of other supportive businesses and amenities. When Jan and Brenda gathered with other concerned citizens, they explored the avenue that the arts need to be a part of any public, private, and community conversation that seeks to bring about positive change. It is part of the vision that Brenda and Jan shared several years ago, and with that, they carry the hopes of other residents who looked for it to attract visitors to our economically distressed city and county. They believe that artists themselves could emerge as compelling leaders in our community's revitalization, working hand in hand with those from traditional sources of power and influence. They were tireless in their devotion to the arts, always present, their knowledge, creativity, and humor in service to and in dialogue with artists, academics, students, community activists, and people from many other backgrounds. They believed in the early concept of creative placemaking, and that a powerful connection emerges when you marry the arts to focus on a city's opportunities. That arts and cultural activities belong front and center in efforts to revitalize some of our most disinvested places. Brenda and Jan's commitment to expanding opportunities in the arts for our residents has had serious implications in how we, as an Arts Council, currently approach arts and culture in our community. Their belief that arts not only enhance human and community development, but can also help to shape the social, physical, cultural, and economic identity of a community by spurring economic development, creating stronger social cohesion, and revitalizing our downtown has shaped the organization that we are today. Jana and Brenda ensured that arts and cultural activities stand front and center in efforts to revitalize and reimagine our downtown and our community at large. They believe that rather than standing outside the community development fence and looking in, arts and culture could and should step inside it and join in. What we have is two women who are committed to expanding opportunity, creating change, and bringing arts to the forefront in the hometown that they make here for themselves and their families. They understood and developed a sense of place for the Downtown Arts Center, and they highlighted the fact that a sense of place can also trace to less tangible qualities. A place that is deeply rooted in cultural traditions, significant historical legacy, and shared heritage of dance, music, language, and other forms of artistic expression. They made this downtown home of the Arts Center. Jan and Brenda believe that creative placemaking, like the Storytelling and Arts Center of the Southeast, have the potential to do more than dressing up a location. It held the promise of creating a feeling, identifying, elevating, and or bringing a collection of visual, cultural, social, and environmental qualities together that infuse a location with meaning and significance. Filling a downtown location with the hopes and dreams of an arts center did all these things for our community. When we're able to connect to a city or a neighborhood through an individual or a shared experience, there's a magnetic pull. You want to stay committed. You want to invest. You want to build a future. This is what Jan and Brenda did for the Arts Center and for Laurenburg. It also allowed the arts to assume an outward orientation in our community. They understood that to be truly successful, this place had to be created with and by community, not to Laurenburg or in spite of it. It's not simply that the arts promote social well-being. They are indispensable elements of what and who we are. When you care about the health of your community and the small businesses and the people that support it, as Jan and Brenda do, you cannot set yourself apart. You go to different meetings, you interact with people in places that are not your area of expertise or knowledge. But because it's important to the neighborhood, you have to become a part of it. And this is incredibly talented women have led me and directed the future of the arts in Scotland County. The arts truly are the future of economic development, community cohesion, and improved quality of life. While I still know only a sliver of their individual stories, each is a reminder of the power of true passion, great art, and focused community vision, and perseverance in helping shape the destiny of our city. And I'm delighted to thank them and honor them once again for the gifts that you, Jan Schmidt, and Brenda Gilbert have brought to this community.
Let's see if I can do this. One word, fit it all together. The 30th annual Ethel and Fortner-Ragan Community Award is presented by St. Andrews University to Brenda Gilbert and Jan Schmidt this 10th day of March of 2016.
Wasn't sure who Aaron was talking about. Thank you very much, Aaron. I want to thank St. Andrews for this recognition and to your staff for all the support that you've given to the arts community. And I'm honored and I'm humbled to be awarded this Fortner Award. I brought my phone book because I thought I could just go through it and read every page because there's so many people on every page that have contributed to the Art Center. But then I realized we were lucky it was a short, in Lorberg it's a very small. But I narrowed it down. We would not have had a festival or a center without the commitment of Brenda and Greg Gilbert and my spouse John. They all worked for hours building, painting, bartending, vacuuming, websites, databases, and anything day or night that was needed. And these two old ladies, if you don't mind me calling them both,
She's a little older than I am.
we're known to go to the dump with trucks filled with trash and building materials that we just had to empty out. But in the end, we ended up with what we felt was a really wonderful center for the community. My kids and grandkids volunteered at the festival, lady teas, and art classes. The first year, our kids and their families stayed in motels because we were supposed to have lots of heads and beds in order to get one of our grants, and so we wanted to make sure that we could fill them up. Thank you. I also want to give a lot of thanks to Frances Fry. She doesn't hear very well. Frances, wait. She was our staff, our first staff, and she worked for many more hours than she was ever paid. She also tried really hard to keep me grounded, which I'm not sure she always felt she was able to succeed. It's quite a feat. The board of directors were worker bees, advisors, and donors that led our way to success. Betty McNair, Medora Mullen, Dot Coble, Carol Whitehead, Richard Gay, and so many others put many years into building an arts presence in Scotland County. Sarah Stewart, Lisa Canada helped write our first grants, and Jamie and Michael Liddy and Mark Canada and many others from UNCP assisted with so many projects. There are so many more volunteers, and many of them are in this room, but it's impossible to mention everybody. That's what the phone book is for. Our first business donor was Wayne Freeman, who gave us a big donation before we even had our first festival. The radio stations, WLNC, WeWo, and The Exchange all provided hours and pages of stories and complimentary promotions. Harley's, Art by Design, Shirt Tales were always helping in one way or another. Tourism and Development Authority provided marketing funds every year, and that's really how we were able to get the word out. And Corey uses the Arts Council of North Carolina, city and county government, and their departments were essential in helping us with the Art Center. The storytellers, both national and local, Bill Leb, Kim Whiteham, Tyrus Jones, our local teller, and Gwen Rayner, they made our festival and other story activities world-class. And they also volunteered a lot with so many other artists. I want to thank Erin because she's doing such a great job as the new director of the center and really keeping the traditions and also building something new for the community. The list goes on, and I say thank you to everybody. You made me look good. Thank you.
I've been here a lot longer than Jan, and I didn't just come when we got started. So let me tell you a little bit about who was out here and helped me get to where I was when I met Jan. I bet everybody here can remember maybe one person or one moment in time that changed your life. I can remember very distinctly the one that changed my life. I was in high school, and my chorus teacher in the audition saw something that I didn't even know I had. And he encouraged me to sing. And I've been singing ever since. But who knew I was a teenager? And I never will forget that day. And I could hear his words and his voice just as clear as if he was sitting right there, right now. Mr. John Hall fostered my interest in music and started me on my road to love of arts. And that flame of love has sizzled in my heart and flared and sometimes smoldered over the years since I've been in Scotland County for almost 60 years now. I met my husband Ray on the stage of a community theater presentation when I was 16, and he was a young engineer at DuPont. He's been my leading man for 50 years now. I taught my children to love and respect the arts, and 3 of my 4 children are here now. I remember one time when I was doing a show in Pinehurst, and my kids were all doing a show in Marlborough County. I think I was doing, what was I doing? Maybe a musical, I can't remember. But they were doing The King and I had to come home every night tired from my show and wash down the little Siamese children makeup on them. But still, today, they all love music and they know all the words to all the lyrics of the songs that we learned. Fortune really sent us to Scotland County. It was in the late 1960s we came with Butler Manufacturing when it first was built. And you know, this community has provided so much to me and my family. A host of talented people, and a lot of them are here. I was so excited when they called and said you can invite some of your friends and family and people who meant a lot to you. Every new adventure I took, I was never by myself. I had a host of people helping me. The theater productions that Gray and Bob and Mary Ann Salemi, when we did it with the Pilot Club back in the 80s, was just getting started. And they came and said, well, you us and let's have a dinner theater and raise some money to start this Pilot Club. And we did. We had a bunch of shows and we had a great time. So many adventures with my good friend Lois Kilkin. I still want to cry. I haven't seen Lois in years. We were so close, and now she's in Charlotte, and she was our public librarian back then. The Encore Theater. We just said, let's have a theater, and we did, didn't we? And it was really very spectacular for about 25 years. It's fallen a little bit behind now, and I'm a part of a committee with the Arts Council Board that's getting it started up again. Our first production was a children's production of Cinderella. And our first production coming up this year is going to be another children's production of the best Christmas pageant ever. Families got involved with our Encore Theater, and I wish that Whit was still here. Whit Gibson and his family were so. Remember, he shaved his head for his role in The King and I, and he never let his hair grow back. That was a long time ago. We had such great fun. It gave children an opportunity to see, and adults to experience the thrill of live theater. After I heard the Golf Capital Chorus, I said, let's have a barbershop chorus for women. And Lois, we did it, didn't we? We started, Dot Hogel's out here somewhere. She came up with the name The Melancholy Babies. And we were the Melancholy Babies with Dot, and Zazie Lebowski is here. Frances Fry was there, Nancy Skelton, a host of talented women who love to sing, and we sang our music in Scotland County and surrounding counties for years. The second person who touched my life was Louise Biggs, and she's not here, but at that time she was a media specialist at Washington Park when it was in middle school. And she said, Brenda, come and tell stories to the kids. And I'd never heard of the storyteller. So I found my little story, and I went and I sat under a tree with the middle school kids with a story on my lap because I was afraid I'd forget it. And it was magic. You didn't have to have a fourth wall there. You could see the kids. experience it with them. It was wonderful. And after that, Lois and I remember our trips to Jonesboro, Tennessee. I went for 25 years or more to the National Festival, and I brought back stories that I told to kids in Scotland County, literally tens of thousands of kids in Scotland County. I told stories to over 30 years that I've been a storyteller. And I only got to do that because of Medora Mullins and Carol Whitehead and all the teachers who, and media specialists who had me into their classes every year. I told just last week to 650 kids at Spring Hill School. Little did I know that all of this was setting up the next chapter in my life. Lauren, newcomer at that time, not a newcomer so much anymore, gave me a call. And my husband, and she said, come out and let's talk about doing something out here at the John Blue Complex to bring people to town. Well, I knew storytelling, and she knew storytelling. She'd been to the festival too. So we thought, let's have a storytelling festival. I was all about the stories. Jan saw even farther. She could see that the arts is an economic engine for this community. She, with her grant writing skills, I was a grant reader. I told her where to put the commas, and this is the lady who got us started, who wrote the grants and got us started. The first grant was a $50,000 grant from the North Carolina Rural Center. And that came about because the head of the Rural Center was here for a chamber event that we happened to be going to, and he said, nobody from Scotland County asked for any money if you look at each other. We'll fix that. And we did. And he gave us $50,000, and that's how we got into that building that we have. We wouldn't be here, and I'm going to have to say it too, because Ray and John, God bless you guys. We were never alone. See, I was never alone. I had Lois, I had Medora, I had Carol Whitehead, I had everybody with me, Bonnie and Nancy. We never did anything by ourselves. But these two gentlemen, John on his hands and knees laid the tile that Tony Parker donated. John was laying it all over the center, putting it down the hall. Ray did the registration for years. People would call to pre-register for the festival at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, and he would answer the phone because we had a dedicated line. He'd say, Storytelling Arts Center. In his pajamas, but he was there and he talked to people. And he got to know the people from out of town who were coming, and they would come to the festival and say, where's Ray? I want to meet you. But did that for years, and did our website. So it's all of you here who've gotten this award tonight. Every one of you who touched my life and held my hand through everything that we've done. Let's have a play. Let's get a barbershop chorus. Let's have a festival, and it just happens because this is Scotland County. Jan's retired now, and I've stepped down as the head of the board. We have great leadership now with Aaron members. And I hope one day, Aaron, that you will say, fortune sent me to Scotland County. I couldn't have found a better place to live and work. Thank you so much.
Earlier, we're fortunate to have Sam Reagan's daughter, Ethel, here, and she's going to come and tell us a little bit about her father, read some poems, and then we'll make the Reagan Award after that.
Thank you. You know, I just have to start by telling you a little story that I realized when I was driving here tonight, because I haven't been here for many years. But I remember this one day when my parents and I were driving back from Laurel Hill, where my mother grew up. She was born and raised in there. And we see the sign. We had heard that they were going to build a college here. And she was so excited. So we're driving down the road. She says, Sam, you've got to stop the car. I've got to get out and do the Highland fling. And he did, and she did. I'm so happy. Before I start, I'd like to let you know that if you're interested, there'll be a stage Factory at Weymouth in Southern Pines on Thursday night, April 28th. I think it starts at 5:30 or 6, and there'll be a reception afterwards. It's based on Marshall Warren did for the North Carolina Poetry Society. And when I moved back to North Carolina in 2010, Marcia asked me if I'd like to do something with it. And I said I would, but could I add some personal information about my father to go along with the poems? And people seemed to like it when we did it in the spring of 2011, so we're doing it again. Including myself, performers will include Lois Holt and Stephen Smith, both poets, Kent Smith, who lead the choir here in Laurinburg, and our current poet laureate, Shelby Stevens, who was a friend of my father's. So it's free, and we'd love to have you at Weymouth if you can be here. I was really pleased when Ted invited me to come tonight and read some of my father's poems, because how best to know Sam Raymond. So he asked me to read Daddy's favorite poems. So I think I did a pretty good job here. I hope you like them. The first one is called Words. It begins with word following word. Music is made. Words make music of their own. And sometimes there is nothing more beautiful than words marching down a page. Words marching. Sometimes they dance. Ice cream. Eating ice cream, my father said, is like lying down and letting the moon shine in your mouth. But this next one is about his mother, Courtney. She spoke of things of long ago. They were as yesterday. She told of a dream. It was in September, and it was not really warm until noon. I'd been sitting in the sun, she said. I could hear a crow across the field. On the trellis, there were new roses. I was sitting in the sun, and he brought me 3 fresh pears from the tree of our pasture. Home is the hunter. He stares from a window in the darkened room. At moonrise, over hills where the full cry of hounds is heard. His fingers smooth the warm, keen wood, his shadows play across the floor and face. His ear follows the fading hunt. Beyond the woods, under silent stars, he sits alone. A dog barks in the distant yard. A nightbird calls, and the cricket resumes his cry. Gray horizons. Sometimes the birds pause in flight to feed upon the foam-beaten sands, but more often they wheel and cry far overhead, never stopping until night's soft crescendo of silence calls them home. The beach is a lonely place on days like this, and I see far until the place where sea meets sky brings vision back again to the glitter and cry of flashing seagulls. And here is the haven of life's mute testimonials, a broken oar, a battered box. And here is the wreckage of some mist-shrouded odyssey. They tell no tales, except silence. This story is your own. Flannery O'Connor. The peacocks cry all night long, help me, help me. 4 miles from Milledgeville on a farm of 500 acres, she raised chickens and peacocks. She taught the grotesques, Southern style of freaks who felt the call to preach, of praying violent men with something in the blood driving them onward but inward. Broiler prices had been falling, and it had not rained for weeks. The grass was almost gone in the pastures. There had been a fire, but the damage was slight. She held their attention with strong Georgia phrases, drawing pictures of people in a land all their own, shifting suddenly from darkness to hard sunlight, caught in the giant hands of fate and the will of God. But the violent tear away, and the good man is hard to find. The crutches lean against the wall, unnoticed and forgotten. In the shade of the trees, the peacocks strike. But at night, In the mellow darkness, they cry all night long, help me, help me. Old poems. All night I listen to the wind and the rain, sometimes coming down hard, sometimes softened by rare quietness that comes past midnight. As I seek sleep by quoting over and over old and favorite poems. Sleep finally comes, and the wind and rain are gone. I wake in the dark before dawn, still remembering lines from old poems. In an all-night cafe, he puts a coffee cup before me and turns to fill the urn again. While I sip coffee, he moves to the end of the counter and resumes the reading of a newspaper printed in Greek. And when he stops to stare across the room, I fancy he dreams of the time when he can sell out and go home again, to that island of ancient stones, the sun, the sea. The girl in the green bathing suit. The girl in the green bathing suit swings in a swing by the sea. I watch from my window. There's a tree bent by the winds that hang over the roof of the house. I can see the trees limbs beyond the girl in the green bathing suit, beyond the sea ice and sand, where the sea rolls breaking white, as far out as where the fishing boat sits motionless in the sun. The election. He didn't get drunk but once every 4 years on election day. We would rise early, go to the polls, drinking hard all day. By the time the polls were closed, he would be passed out. It was his way of expressing it. My father always wrote a birthday poem for my mother, whose birthday was March 31st, and the next two poems are for her. Birthday greeting. I awoke this morning to the green of spring and 100 thoughts of you, piled together in handfuls of sunsets and stars, mornings, noons, and nights, of silences and sounds, times and places marked and unmarked. But how do we measure things which know no measure? Why do I wake each morning with wonder? Why do I wake spring when I can be you? Let us walk through April. It was a pear tree in bloom that lit up your eyes. You came with blossom time. Dogwoods and lilacs, camellia and azalea, and the glow of the redwood tree. Thousands of wildflowers run before your feet, and a faint green hovers in the woods. Here we are, just before the coming of April, and the whole world was new, and each day is a beginning. A time of sunlight and splendor. Come, let us walk in April. This last poem is the one that touched me, so I read it, or it was read at my father's funeral. I think it's really beautiful. The marked and the unmarked. I cannot say when which luminous evening I shall go out beyond the stars, to witness spaces in unmarked time, turning nights to days and days to nights. This is the place where I live. I planted this tree. I watched it grow. The leaves fall and I stuck them on my feet. This is the street on which I walk. I have walked it many times. Sometimes it seems there are echoes of my walking. In the mornings, in the night, in these long evenings of silence and stars, the unmarked stars. Thank you.
I'm going to invite Professor Stephanie McDavid to come up and introduce our Sam Ragan Fine Arts Award tonight.
We are honoring Ben Owen III this evening with the 2016 Sam Ragan Award to the Fine Arts. Ben Owen is a studio potter from Seagrove, North Carolina. He was born into a traditional potter family, which moved from England and settled in North Carolina in the late 1700s. Knowing more about the Owen family history and their pottery traditions and their legacy is the key to fully understanding Ben and his work. He was only 8 years old when he first was introduced to clay by his grandfather, and by age 13 he held an apprenticeship with his grandfather and father in the studio. Through high school, he practiced and studied to perfect the Owen aesthetics and craft, and by college, he began to create a unique body of work which merged his family traditions with his personal vision. His forms and designs and colors were influenced by his travels and studies in China and Japan and Australia and Europe and the United States, as well as his ongoing interest in nature. Ben is passionate about every step in the process of pottery making. Recently, he has concentrated on glaze creation and experimentation. As an artist, it is music to my ears to hear him describe this focus in his craft. He talks about the firing process in his 4-chambered wood kiln, the purposes of chemicals he uses, the final results of texture and color and depth he achieves on the surfaces of his works. That's exciting. The rest of the world also recognizes Ben's accomplishments. The work he has done has been exhibited, sought after, and acquired for many permanent collections in national and international museums, including the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C., the International Folk Art Museum in Santa Fe, New Mexico, the Mint Museum of Craft and Design in Charlotte, North Carolina. His work also graces premier hotels and public spaces like the Ritz-Carlton in Tokyo, Japan, the Umstead Hotel in Spa and Cary, North Carolina, the Mandarin Hotel in Boston, Massachusetts, and the Grand American Hotel in Salt Lake City, Utah. Additionally, Ben has been recognized as a North Carolina living treasure and inducted into North Carolinian Society. Now this is an enthusiastic artistic activity. This is a shining example of generous giving to our community and commitment to perpetuating the arts in North Carolina. Ben Owen, we want to honor you with the 2016 Sam Reagan Fine Arts Award.
And the 35th Annual Samuel Talmadge Reagan Award for contributions to the fine arts in North Carolina is presented by St. Andrews University to Ben Owen III this 10th day of March, 2016. Congratulations.
Thank you so much for this wonderful evening. Thank you for every one of you coming out, the Reagan family, and just what you have established and what you have done for the arts and the crafts, and it's really remarkable. My grandfather once shared to many people over the years that no man can be successful on his own. He has to rely on all different sources to be inspiration, for encouragement, for mentorship, and many different ways that it can come. It can be in all different shapes and forms. And so from there, tonight I want to show you a little bit about some of the influences I've had, and I'll give you a little chance to sit up there for a few minutes. Okay.
As a proud wife, I will say thank you so much for having us here, for giving my 10-year-old the opportunity to eat a formal dinner, and for being patient and kind. We must go because bedtime awaits, but I'm so proud of this man, and what people say about him is really true. Very special.
Thank you. My wife, Lori Ann, is such an encourager, as well as her patience she shares through with our 3 children. We have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 10-year-old, as you see here tonight. So they are truly our best creation that we have in our lives. But it's through those creations that we learn a lot from. It's something that my grandfather, I remember the first time that we walked out to the studio, and spending that time together was just really, truly special. And I'll elaborate a little bit more on it, and I'll show you a few things up first here. I started out with this kind of a image here of these Greek symbols of earth, water, and fire, and how those 3 key ingredients are such an integral part in making the earthen vessel. So from there, looking at pieces, forms, and designs, some of the earliest forms of civilization were documented, and still today we're still discovering more and more each day of these earthen vessels in all different shapes that record history in life, how it's been such a big part, and whether it's for ceremonial, for everyday functional use, and just for beauty as well. So even some of the earliest tablets that were written, some of the earliest language were pressed into a clay slab to document it and to make it permanent. North Carolina has such wonderful resources. Looking at what we have here in the state, in this region where the coastal plain is, and we're just slightly above, about 15 minutes north of the coastal plain where they feel like it begins. And there's a lot of geological things that occurred over time with the clays, for going from a red clay, from more of the slate belt, volcanic ash that settled into water and was continuing to age over a long period of time. But taking and looking at those materials, how it crafted and how it shaped a community like ours in the Seagrove region. We have many wonderful and talented artists today in the Seagrove area. If you've never had a chance to visit the Seagrove area, you will be so surprised and so delighted to see a lot of the craftsmen and the artisans that are there that are continuing to work in this tradition. Whether they are newcomers, someone that studied at a university, or you come from a family like the Cole family, which is over 10 generations of the Cole potters working in the area. Even our highway in our region being named the Pottery Highway by the state of North Carolina, it was just quite remarkable. And through Sam Reagan and many other cultural resources as far as their job in promoting what we have in crafts and arts here in North Carolina has helped us to bring what is so precious, just like Scotland County, how it's so important to bring these elements into life in a community and bring it together, how we can enhance people's lives through these vessels. My grandfather learned from his father learned from his father, and we've traced back over 6 generations in our family as far as the craft of making earthen vessels. Anything from the jugs on the left for storage. There can be all different directions I could go in tonight, but because of our time, we'll be limited. But we could talk about NASCAR, we could talk about all kinds of things, how pottery actually played a role in NASCAR. So, and even transportation, carrying something that was easier to transport, to carry liquids in, like a ring jug. Even grave markers. We have I'll show in a slide here soon, a cemetery where they represented and made a great memory of a family member on a earthen vessel with inscribed on the surface. Storage jars, pickling, preserves. This is the earliest piece that we have in our collection, made by J.J. Owen, going back 6 generations. But how we take and how we use them in life, how it brings, whether to comfort a family that missed a loved one or has lost a loved one, to going and visiting the area, taking some friends and visiting potters in the Seagrove area. They see these signs and like, wow, we could spend many days here. So through these crafts, we've been able to learn a lot. The Cole family, these are made by J.B. Cole's pottery that was made in our area just a few miles away from me, right south of Seagrove. But how they eventually built a catalog. They eventually had customers coming and they would bring a piece of pottery and say, well, can you make this piece for me? It's in glass, but I want it made in clay in your beautiful turquoise glaze. So they developed a library. They developed a vocabulary within the clay that they could use that would bring joy into people's lives. Other integral parts like Jugtown. A lot of potters in concentrated areas, like a concentration of writers in the community. Jugtown symbolized how potters would work in an area because of the resources. Jugtown pottery eventually developed, and my grandfather went to work for the Busbys. And through identity, through marking, through that logo or an identity like Jugtown pottery, and then later on my grandfather stamped Owen Master Pottery used in the 1960s. How people could relate to something that was made out of this clay and who was the maker. A lot of key things that happened along the way were from outside influences. Someone coming from the outside into a community and they realized that this craft is in a community. The Busbys, Jock and Juliana Busby, they discovered potters like my great-grandfather and many others in our community, and they thought, we need to help this vessel to take even further. We need to take that clay and stretch it even further than it's ever been before. And so they took that as a way of working with people like my grandfather, Ben Owen Sr., other potters, and they introduced them to other cultures. These are sketches they did in the 1920s and 1930s, going to museums like the Metropolitan Museum and others in the South. And they would take those forms, like a simple teapot or creamer and sugar. I'll never forget the opportunity I had when I made my first teapot. I was about 13 years old, and my granddad wasn't feeling good that day. And I thought, well, I'm going to sneak this one teapot out. And I was really working way beyond my skill level, trying to attempt to make a teapot. But I did it anyway in secret, and my grandma was great to work with me and keeping it quiet. And I managed to make some. I brought him in the house, and a granddad sat up and looked at him since he wasn't feeling well. And he started pointing out, well, you need to make the knob bigger. You need to make the spout bigger. You made the spout too small. You made the handle too big. So he was out there the next day just coaching me and being such a great mentor. But it's through those times that working with simple materials, that a lot of associations were looking at cultures like in Japan and other areas where simplicity and tranquility, picking simple elements and working with them and finding beauty within those simple things. We use a wood-fired kiln, and this is my grandfather and one of his helpers in the 1960s, heating the work and finishing, or baking as we call, or firing. But then forms that they would look at forms from Chinese culture. This is a piece from Han Dynasty that I have in our collection, and this is a piece my grandfather made in the 1930s. So you can see how we mimic, we take, and we look at forms, and we build on those forms and enhance them and find ways that us even more. I think often one of the things that my grandfather taught me was you're going to make some mistakes, you're going to have some failures along the way, but those failures and mistakes are probably going to be the best learning method for you than anything else in the world. So making those mistakes, he encouraged. He would have me to make 20, 30 pots, working with the pieces. My father, Ben Wade Owen Jr., he would encourage me, and he did more of the glazing and firing and other processes of the work. But through that, they coached me and guided me through a lot of the steps. And I think probably the most important thing was an element of patience. So through that patience and determination, I went to college at Pfeiffer University, or Pfeiffer College at that time. I spent a couple years actually teaching a clay class while I was in college there. And then later I attended East Carolina University and went more in-depth into the arts, learning more about drawing and painting and jewelry and woodworking. And so through those experiences, it really helped me and enabled me to pick up talents and skills like taking photographs of my work, learning how to represent your work and how you want the colors to show up in the end product. And fellowships into other countries. I had my grandfather never had a chance to go until he was well past retirement and not physically able, but he was invited to go to China and Japan. But when I had the opportunity to go, I thought, well, I'm continuing that tradition that Granddad looked at things in museums, but now I want to take it to the next step and go and actually find why those techniques were so important in a community in Japan that had been making pottery over thousands of years. And from there, we studied and we toured and we looked at a lot about what craft and what the pottery meant in those cultures as well. And bringing that home, it really set into me thinking about, it's really a lot about the materials. It's a lot about the clay and how we take that clay in our hands. This is a photograph from the mid-1950s, and this is one of my neighbors when he was a kid. He was helping a fellow helper at our pottery, Boy Xiao. And this is in the clay pit. They were literally digging the clay for the potters to make the pots. I still continue to do that today. I go out with one of my friends, Fred Johnston. He's a very talented potter in the Seagrove area. And we go prospect. We go look at materials in these clays. And through that, I want to show you a little bit of a video that we created recently. They'll tell you a little bit about the process and the materials. I believe that we come from the soil, made and shaped and formed, and then we return back to the soil. Very much the same way we're transforming these materials that were once a rock or a rock-like material, and then how it's been weathered and changed, and then we're creating it back into a rock. You look back at the history of the potters going out and digging clay in the area. They had a horse-drawn wagon, and they used a pickaxe and a shovel to harvest the clay. But today we have a lot of modern amenities with backhoes and dump trucks and other things that are a little bit easier for us to be able to harvest the materials. But once that clay is harvested and brought back on a vehicle to our facility here, we take and allow that clay to dry over a period of time from 6 months to a year. For some people, landscapers, other occupations, dirt has many different meanings. But for potters, this is called gold dirt. And then we want to break it down and pulverize it into a powder. We'll take that material and condition it to a consistency where we can take and mix and blend it.
When we mix it up with water like this, we want to make sure that we're breaking down the chunks of clay into a real smooth slip. Clay platelets are more elongated instead of like a round kind of pebbly under a microscope. They're actually platelets. So it's almost like weaving together these different types of clays. But this clay is a little more sticky, and we use this to bond the rest of the clay recipe together.
So we'll take all those ingredients, whether it be 2 or 3 clays or half a dozen clays we put in the recipe. There are a lot of parallels to making a cake, having the right proportion of ingredients within that recipe to make that successful. And a potter has to do the same thing. One of the primary reasons that we mix our clay in a liquid format is it's easier for us to deal with. It's not so dusty. The wetness allows us to pass it through a screen about 3 times as fine as a window screen would be, and it will catch any of that debris, the roots of rocks and other impurities that we find naturally in the clay when we harvest it from the ground. We feed it into a machine called a filter press. And the filter press is pretty much doing reverse osmosis. Over a period of time, about 12 to 14 hours, we will gradually increase the air pressure. And basically we're driving that water off of the clay by forcing it through the cotton canvases and allowing the clay to cake up and become more of a wet solid. And from there we will feed it into a pug mill. We'll take and do one last conditioning of the clay,
and almost like a sausage grinder in a way, but it just takes and chops and blends the clay one final time prior to being used on the potter's wheel.
So from there, once we mix and process the clay, we let it sit and rest for a period of time. But because of the wetness and diluting the clay and making it very soupy and then mixing it back and making it into a solid, we can actually speed up the aging process. It's almost like having a bottle of wine that you don't want to wait 2 or 3 years to drink. You can do it right away. But in the throwing part, the making the vessels, it's a really key part, as you'll see in this next segment, about the throwing of the pieces and how they are built up.
Just that practice over and over of making a cylinder or making a bowl or a plate and finding the best way to have the end product to look a little better each time. You know, each pot is a sketch for the next, and you just have to grab that lump of clay and start again on the wheel and build upon that and take those lessons that you learned from the past. My grandfather shared with me one time back early on that it's easy to make things in life complicated, but it's very hard to keep things simple. And being able to pull that clay up, and it just really responded to that movement with my fingers, almost like it was effortless. It's almost like you're filling these vessels up with air, and you're like, do I want to blow a little bit more air into it? Do I want to give it a little more volume, give it a little more breath of life to it? Clay can have a mind of its own, and looking early on in my career, I found that it was a struggle at first trying to learn how to shape and fashion the clay on the wheel. When you're making a large-scale vase, it has to be made in multiple sections. Just because the physicality of actually shaping that much clay at one time, say a 60 or 80 or even 100-pound jar, when you make them out of 15, 20-pound pieces and stack them up and build them up, it helps you to work in a little bit easier fashion. We can spend a lot of time emphasizing and using the latest technology or components to making pots today, but still that foundation of using your hands, using a good will to spin the clay, and really having your eyes and your mind and your hands working in unison to make that pot. And there's nothing that can substitute that, no matter what type of new technology there is out there. I think it is true that we can be distracted by so many things that may not be relevant in what we need to be focusing on as a potter or any kind of craft, but we have to find that way of kind of channeling and putting that energy into things that we feel are the most important part of our lives.
So from there, when we're making pieces, I work in a cycle. I'll make a cycle of pieces and make a body of work, as we call it. And once we make that body of work, we prepare it for the next step, the firing process. And we have different techniques. It's almost like going to a restaurant for Italian food compared to a Japanese restaurant or a Chinese restaurant or even Lebanese. So it's kind of, you have to work with it in different ways depending on what colors they are. You can't put a pizza in the oven and a roast at the same time and expect both to be successful. So in a lot of the same ways with our clay, we have to choose the right type of the type of baking or the heating of the work. Heating it too hot or not enough can greatly influence the success or the failure of the end product. But these pieces, these vessels that we make, why are they so important? They've been important in my life because I've learned how to do it for my family. But what I've even found more greater an influence and a satisfaction for me is how they have been like a seed. They've been a seed of joy for many different people, whether they use it for tea or for as a gift for a wedding, or just simply just making a beautiful place in a home, adding a splash of color. So we find these vessels and how they can work, whether it's for a designer in circumstance, I'll draw out a design for a project and then making the finished product. So from there you take that next challenge, you take that next step in making pieces that will complement whether it's a surrounding or bringing that joy, as I mentioned earlier. Recent projects have been for the New Hanover Arboretum in Wilmington, for the memorial site in their contemplation garden. I made this water fountain, to making other pieces for different installations, complementing something that already exists, like the lamps on each side of the vase I made. So looking at things from nature and beyond what we have here on Earth, this glaze we call stardust. A friend of mine worked on the Hubble Space Telescope, and she's been a repeat customer for many years. She started pulling up on her phone on Google all these photos from like stardust, from the telescope, and I thought, well, that's kind of a catchy name. I think I might use that for my name of my glaze. So, but you just never know what the influence is going to be. And I think that when we keep an open mind and we find that having a family is another element of it too. That was my son Ivy that was here earlier back when he was young and one of my planters. And then teaching them other things, teaching them other skills. And I think it's important what we teach, and whether that starts out in a sandbox, and those ideas of creation start in that sandbox, but being willing to step out of that sandbox and try new things and add things back to that sandbox that's going to make it even more fun. Whether it's my daughter Avery, I apologize she couldn't be here tonight, but she has many commitments, but she loves writing her own music. She bought a ukulele last year, and I just love hearing her play it, and her new song she writes every week. To other elements, like my son Ivy, he had a project on the lighthouse, Cape Hatteras Lighthouse, and building it out of clay, so we had a fun time building that. So it's through those experiences I think have really brought joy into our lives. But a great place to see a lot more than just my own work is the North Carolina Pottery Center. It's a great educational museum, and it has a wonderful collection of historical as well as contemporary work. And I welcome you to come to the Seagrove area and visit and find other talents like myself in the area. But the key thing in summary is, what are we teaching the next generation? Are we teaching them hands-on skills? Moreover than technology, how it's been such an important part of our lives in recent years. Working with your hands and learning that coordination, I think, is the next step for us to preserve what we have and take it to the next level. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. And once again, congratulations to all the awardees tonight. I don't think we could have had a better group of individuals that we could recognize for their contributions to the arts in various dimensions. And I'm not sure what you say after all that's happened here tonight to add anything to it, except that I reflected a little earlier that we were among a group of giants. Celebrating Ethel Fortner, our godfather of this event on May's, Brenda and Jan being added to that list, and but also we reflect that those giants are standing on the shoulders of others who helped make many contributions and help them grow and become the artists they are today. So once again, congratulations, and we hope you enjoyed this evening, and safe travel home. Thank you.